Hi, I'm Andy Pocock. Today I'm with Dr. John Warlow and just going to be asking him about his story. John, tell us a bit about your story.
Andy, I think my story is really there to be told because I think it hopefully will be encouraging for other people, because it's out of brokenness in many ways that I've come from. Where I was born in India, my family were expats, they're actually missionaries in India, and so I was born in a situation where I was looked after by a nanny and they had very little in the way of contact with my parents. So I know a little bit about abandonment, well, what felt like to me to be abandonment, and aloneness was very familiar to me from a very early age, much the same as for many people who will be watching this video as well. The other thing is, the first language I spoke was Hindi, and for some reason language has not been a strength of mine, and here I am as a psychiatrist, which is basically a job to do with language, and so I think that's it's partly out of those two things, the abandonment and my difficulty in language, that the pictures and the shapes have come, and a lot of those shapes is to do with connection.
I understand that. So how long were you in India? Tell us a little bit about your story up until Australia.
Yeah. Okay, so largely speaking, my first 10 years were in India. We had a small time back in England, and when we came back to England, it was only later that I found out that my parents were going to go back to India for 4 years and leave us in England, which was what the culture was back then for missionaries when they were going overseas. Prior to them, it was in sort of Livingston days, the father would go and never be seen again, so it seemed. And then my teens, virtually coming out of nothing. Then my teens, I guess all I had was God, and so my spirit circle started to develop. Obviously in my outer circles I was learning slowly and developing physically, and to some extent socially, but not by any greater means, and again I think aloneness, I knew what aloneness was still then, although I was so grateful for that connection with God.
So your teen years were in England?
My teen years were in England, and then I moved on to, got into med school in Birmingham, and interestingly, at the end of med school, I practiced in a general practice where we were largely in an Asian patient population, but it was there at university that I would be cutting up a human body as part of the anatomy, and really starting to understand the physical circle, and such an immense privilege to do that. And then I'd go and catch the number 11 outer circle bus of Birmingham, and the joke with that is if you miss it, just walk to the next bus stop and catch it there. It was so slow. And on that bus I would sit by someone. There were just 2 seats on either side, and I'd sit by someone and try and offer them a John's Gospel. And while that was great, and I don't know what the results of that, there were only brief contacts. On the other hand, eventually it just didn't fit for me. It was like now I was spirits, keeping up the spiritual side, and body with the medical school. There's something missing there. And that's when at the end of med school, and at the end of doing some medical practice, I went to Barber College north of London at a place called All Nations Christian College, in a place called Ware. Ware is where? Well, where is where? W-A-R-E is where is.
Thank you for that. So what influenced you there? What did you take away from that?
The biggest thing I took away from Barber College was a fiancée. A lady, my wife.
She's not particularly big.
Jill. But it was there actually that I started, indeed, to look at what was lying in between. And in fact, Jill and myself were there with one of the staff, and we had a prayer time. And suddenly I saw myself leaving the station in Delhi, still tears up a bit, and with my mum there on the platform and the train going, and that was pretty hard, and it still touches me a bit.
So that abandonment went really deep.
It went really deep, and so for the first time, and then with that, in the presence of the star person, Jill, and who's probably still my girlfriend at that stage, and also God, there was that triangle starting to develop, and healing started to come. And it was from there that when we went to New Zealand, got married, and I got into psychiatry after doing another year of general practice, that I really started to study that in between the body and the spirit, the mind and the heart.
I'm just really interested. Did that wounding, that abandonment, did that affect and cause you to do what you do now?
I think all of what I've done has been a part of what I'm doing now. It's nearly the way I see it is, yeah, sure, part of it was no doubt to heal myself, to work on myself, and I've had lots of help. I've been very grateful for the pyramid of support around me. But also, it's out of, I think often God takes things which are broken and makes things again.
So in a way, you needed the product for yourself.
I certainly needed the product for myself. And the place where I needed it most was actually then at the end of that psychiatry, when I did my fellowship exam. Only 17% of us, and we were doctors, passed first time in that exam in New Zealand. And I think a large reason why I passed was I was in a field, psychiatry, which was so abstract. I think I would have been better in surgery in some ways. Mind you, good that I wasn't, because I was blind in one eye, and I think I would have been cutting the wrong things. And so it was there that I just had, in order to pass the exam, I had to make some kind of sense, get some kind of structure. And that was when the circles developed. And the circles have remained much the same since then. And my circles were starting to develop then. I was starting to grow my social life. And love was also starting to come in a greater way, particularly with Jill, my wife.
So John, the circle, you're telling me that you can put enough detail on the circle to pass a psychiatry exam?
The strange thing, which might sound arrogant, is absolutely yes, and yet it can also be as simple, because it's a framework and not a model, it can also be as simple as doing something on a coffee table, placing one's chopsticks or glasses or whatever around to actually illustrate what's on the circles.
I remember a friend of mine that I sent to you said that he had learnt more in an hour with you than he had in sort of 20 hours of therapy before.
Well, he was very generous and being very nice to me as well. Then I went to Melbourne to do my child psychiatry, and that's where I think the whole shape of the square and the cross came. And also that was really moulded very much in conjunction. So I came up to Brisbane, about 20 years ago, and I'm now coming up to 60, which is very old. Don't feel that, mind you. But and that's where the shape of the cross and the square came, which has become so deep.
So that came later?
Came later, yeah.
So give us the order that it developed.
Yeah, I think that initially, there's circles. It was nearly like God moved across the deep and the darkness. There just wasn't anything there. And then the spirit came. Then I went to med school. There was the physical circle.
So the circle was the first?
The circle was the first one. Then the mind and heart. Mm-hmm. And that also paralleled my life. Yes. And then I think, as I was mentioning at Bible College, there was the triangle there with Margaret Jones, the member of staff, and Jill and myself. And then it was in Melbourne, the square and the shape started, and it was really then forged into its current shape. Here in Brisbane.
When did you then add the pyramid?
The pyramid, it was interesting. I think that came maybe near the end, I'm not sure. So it's been, in fact, it's now been 25 years since the circles began. Okay. But there's been that developing process. It's plateaued now a bit over the last 5-7 years, but it'd be really interesting to see if there are further changes as time goes on.
So you're still open to changes to the framework?
I'm open. This framework is to serve us, not to us to serve the framework. I'm very grateful for it. It articulates for me my journey, and also I think it really helps me in my relating, in my personal and spiritual life.
So John, if you had to sum up your journey and the framework,
yeah,
just put that together?
Yeah, just summing it up, I think I'm just so grateful for it, how to put it together, and also just walking the steps with people, because I think that actually came as time went on, as the journey went on. I forget where that came in the actual history of it, but I'm just so grateful for now where it's at. And indeed, if you want to plagiarize it, take it, use it as part of your story. If it empowers you and if it serves you, that's fine. Otherwise, just pass it on, and hopefully, anyway, I pray that it'll be benefit to you. And thanks very much for listening, and thanks, Andy, for being together. I just really also so grateful for our journey together.